She straightforwardly mentioned it as if discussing the weather. My family views Preston as a superior option to you. I merely wish to avoid any discomfort at the party. That's all. No regret, no embarrassment. It was simply about avoiding awkwardness at her brother's birthday celebration. This conversation took place in our kitchen, the kitchen I financed, in the house I purchased, in the Nashville neighborhood she chose. And my wife of 4 years had just disclosed that her family considered me inferior to her former boyfriend. Her reason for sharing this wasn't remorse or humiliation, it was practicality. She sought a controlled response, a rehearsed dialogue. What she received instead was a man who had just made an irreversible choice. I responded, "You should have fun at the party." She departed 2 hours later, adorned in the attire her mother had chosen for her, bearing the wine she'd purchased for her brother's festivities. She bestowed a kiss upon my cheek as she left. Remarkably, she kissed me on the cheek. By the time she exited the driveway, I was already on the phone. By the time she returned that evening, there remained in that house only the furniture and the letter I'd placed on the kitchen counter, near the coffee maker she had gifted to me for Christmas. My identity is Ellison Carr. I am 43 years old. I practice as an orthopedic surgeon at Vanderbilt University Medical Center in Nashville, Tennessee. I mended fractured bones, rebuilt damaged knees for elite athletes, and dedicated 17 years to constructing a career I am truly satisfied with. Yet, 4 of those years were spent married to a woman who smiled at me, yet seemingly disparaged me behind my back. This is the reality when I ultimately ceased trying to comprehend it and simply left. If this narrative resonates with you, I urge you to click that subscribe button immediately and share your thoughts below. Discuss the moment when someone you cherished revealed their true self to you. I read all comments. And if you know someone who needs to realize that leaving isn't a sign of weakness, please pass this video on to them. The like button only takes a couple of seconds, and it aids this channel in reaching more individuals who require such stories. Now, let us delve into it. I must revisit the start, as the start holds significance, not in the conventional sense. I failed to recognize the signs early on in my relationship with Darcy, despite being a proficient diagnostician. In my professional life, I am accustomed to deciphering symptoms, identifying patterns, and spotting things that others tend to overlook for patients. However, when it came to Darcy, I missed all the indicators. We first met at a charity event at the Country Music Hall of Fame, an authentic Nashville experience characterized by formal attire, Stetson hats, lavish open bars, and exorbitant $800 per plate costs. My hospital colleague had purchased a table for the event, while Darcy was present with a group of women from her marketing firm. She stood out at the table as the one who wasn't performing or overly conscious of being watched. Instead, she engaged in genuine conversation and laughter with her friends. I took note, as most others did not. We spoke for 2 hours that night, and I discovered that Darcy hailed from Brentwood, Nashville's affluent suburb. In areas characterized by well-manicured year-round lawns and subdivision names featuring estates and reserve, lived Darcy, whose father ran a commercial real estate development company. Her mother, Lynette, served on 3 nonprofit boards, chairing 2 of them. Older brother Garrett was involved in the family business. Preston Wexford, her ex, was introduced casually on our 3rd date, with only brief mention beforehand. Hailing from Tennessee for 4 generations, the Wexfords were old Southern money, not ostentatious but prominent. The grandfather was a state senator, and the father worked in banking. Darcy spoke of Preston as one might a read chapter in a book. We dated for 2 years before it naturally concluded. Currently, we're amicable. In hindsight, I should have probed further, but instead, I found myself enamored with her intelligence. Authentically so. Darcy was intelligent, and this charm proved irresistible. I regret not asking more inquiries. She oversaw financials for 3 prominent brands within her company, coordinated campaigns with budgets that would make many flinch. Her humor was subtle, a dry kind I've consistently admired. She displayed interest beyond small talk in my profession, inquiring about experiences like performing first procedures following mishaps or patients' responses post-major reconstructions. This made me feel valued in what I did. I was 40 years old, having been divorced previously, a brief union in my early 30s that concluded amicably without offspring. At the time, I wasn't seeking anything profound. However, eventually I was. We spent a year and 4 months together. I proposed beneath Chimney Rock in western North Carolina during an autumn excursion. when the foliage displayed its vibrant display in the mountains. She sobbed, genuine tears, not feigned ones. I was certain. The following spring, we exchanged vows at a Tennessee countryside venue with undulating green hills and white tents, surrounded by about 200 people who appeared genuinely content. Her parents were amiable that day. Randall shook my hand, labeling me a good man. Lynette embraced me, referring to me as son. I believed I had reached a firm foundation. Prior to delving into what went awry, I wish to share with you something about what was correct because it was real. For at least the initial 2 years of that marriage, Darcy and I shared a genuinely good bond. We were an effective team. We journeyed together, a long weekend in Charleston, a week in Costa Rica, a road trip up through Virginia during fall. Our discussions would stretch until 2 in the morning without either party noticing the passage of time. She graced my hospital's charity gala and captivated every surgeon present. Attended 3 of her company's gatherings, maintained a smile despite the repetitive marketing small talk causing my gaze to drift, as she and her circle were significant to me. I feel compelled to express this sentiment because it's crucial to recognize that one can be part of something genuine yet find oneself in an unfavorable circumstance simultaneously. These 2 aspects are not necessarily contradictory. Love does not provide immunity against a situation that is gradually being shaped without your participation. The initial signs of trouble were discreet, and I wish to confess this openly. I desire transparency because I believe many individuals who have experienced something similar spend years questioning themselves about how I didn't notice it earlier, and the reality is that you don't see it when you're not actively looking for it. You are immersed in a life you selected, trusting the person you wedded. The first inconsistency, which I didn't recognize as a fissure at the time, I regarded as a peculiarity, was Darcy seldom discussing me to her family without prompting. During our dinner at their Brentwood residence, the dialogue flowed around me, similar to water flowing around a rock. Randall discussed business matters, Lynette spoke about renovations on their lake house in Norris, and Garrett broached various deals he was handling. Darcy effortlessly participated in all discussions, while I savored the exquisitely prepared meal and contributed when an opportune moment presented itself, otherwise simply being present. At first, I assumed this was their familial dynamic. Some families function in such a manner, introverted yet not unfriendly, self-contained. However, upon closer observation, I noticed something peculiar. Preston's name would often surface during these dinners. Not frequently and not in a deliberate way. Rather, it was as if mentioning him was speaking of someone integral to the group. For instance, Preston's mother attended the gala, or Preston's firm recently acquired that downtown building, or Garrett bumped into Preston at the club last week. Each time the name arose, there was an unspoken pause as if waiting for my reaction. Yet I provided no material for speculation, either nodding or replying neutrally, allowing the discussion to progress. Yet the name persisted, and Darcy didn't attempt to steer us away from the topic or request a change of subject. Instead, she allowed it to linger between us. The second observation I made was that Darcy managed our social engagements differently depending on the company. With my professional peers such as surgeons, residents, and hospital administrators, she was outgoing, attentive, and took pride in discussing my accomplishments. However, when we were with her family's circle, the Brentwood crowd, the country club set, or those within the Wexford-adjacent social sphere, there was a subtle change in her demeanor. Not drastically, just slightly. She became more careful, more guarded, and seemed to edit herself a bit more. Initially, I reasoned that she was simply adapting to different environments, but over time, I began to wonder if something else was at play. In various social settings, I've observed distinct behaviors. I've told myself numerous things, but the third observation that strikes me as surprising is the constant comparison. It's baffling I let it go on for so long. It started subtly. Preston always sends flowers on the first day of a new job, casually mentioned while Darcy was texting at the kitchen counter. Preston's family would take an annual trip together every fall, wistfully discussed during holiday plans talk. Not intended to harm or offend, but rather carelessly dropped as if it held no significance. I raised the issue once, around 8 months into our marriage. Calmly, I expressed my observation that Preston's name seemed to frequently appear in certain contexts, and I wanted to understand why. Darcy looked at me with genuine bewilderment, stating she wasn't aware of doing it. She claimed it held no meaning. She explained her family had known Preston for a long time, and he was simply part of their circle. Just as an old neighborhood remains part of your life even after relocation, I conceded to this reality. I should not have, yet I did. The party invitation, or its omission, arrived on a Thursday. It was Garrett's 35th birthday celebration planned at his Green Hills residence, one of Nashville's most affluent neighborhoods with winding streets and homes nestled behind mature oaks. A dinner gathering, perhaps attended by around 40 people, close friends and family. I became aware of it on Wednesday evening when Darcy was chatting with her mother about her outfit choices. With the party set for Saturday, I casually brought it up at dinner, asking, "It seems Garrett's party is this weekend. Got any plans before that?" Darcy put down her fork. A brief pause ensued, one that held an entire conversation in its silence. She then stated, "I was going to discuss that with you." I waited patiently. She explained, "My family has a complex past with certain issues and Preston will be present. I believe it might be less uncomfortable for everyone if you decide not to attend this occasion. I'm concerned about potential awkwardness." I inquired, "What type of awkwardness?" To which she replied, words that have echoed in my mind countless times since then. She spoke them confidently and directly, as if she had been carrying the burden and was finally ready to let it go. "My family perceives you as inferior to Preston, and I don't want any discomfort at the gathering." The kitchen fell silent after that. I could hear the refrigerator humming, a car moving slowly along our street outside, and my own breath, steady and even, like during a complex surgery when calm is necessary. I responded, "Got it." She appeared almost relieved, as if the difficult part was now behind us. She appeared relieved, as if anticipating a confrontation, and was pleased I wouldn't provoke one. She commented, "I expected you'd understand. You're always so logical about matters." I replied, "Go have fun at the party," and then remained seated at the kitchen table for a while after she ascended to pick out her attire. Her words lingered in my thoughts. It wasn't that her family disliked me. It's common for families not to favor their children's spouses. That's ordinary human. What she revealed was more than that. She admitted she viewed me as a step down and hadn't defended me. She didn't argue with her family on my behalf. She didn't declare they were wrong or asserted I wasn't. Instead, she sought to avoid awkwardness, which implied she acknowledged their judgment or at least didn't disagree vehemently enough to make a difference. 4 years of matrimony, and the standard within that home was defined by a man whose grandfather held a senatorial position. I ascended the stairs. Darcy was in the bathroom. I opted for a shower in the guest bathroom, an unusual choice. I retired to the guest room, a space I had never occupied before. In the pitch black, I reached my resolution. The day was Friday. By 6:30 a.m., I found myself in the OR. A succession of 3 surgeries filled the day, leaving no room for anything else but unwavering attention. A 60-year-old man enduring chronic pain underwent a femoral reconstruction. A 21-year-old collegiate soccer player required an ACL and meniscus surgery. A woman in her 50s, long awaiting this appointment due to a damaged hip, was also on my list. When one practices my profession, there is no place else to be. No room for a crumbling marriage. No thoughts permitted for soirees in Green Hills. In that body, I was mending a particular issue, and nothing else in the world compares to the sense of accomplishment when it's done correctly. I concluded my last operation at 4:15. I used the attending lounge to shower and change into civilian attire, then drove home. Darcy was preparing herself. She had her outfit spread out on the bed, which I could see as I walked by the bedroom door while she was doing her makeup at the vanity. She mentioned, "There's leftover pasta in the fridge if you get hungry," as if that were adequate, as if that was the suitable thing to propose to a man you informed the day before that his family deemed him inferior. I replied, "Thanks." I entered my study and phoned 2 individuals. The first was my lawyer, not one specializing in divorce, but a friend who was a partner at a downtown firm and whom I trusted implicitly. I shared with him in general terms what was unfolding and asked for advice before making any decisions. Spoke with me for 30 minutes in a composed and systematic manner, which provided me with greater clarity regarding my situation. The subsequent call was to my friend Waverly, a skilled general contractor and one of the finest individuals I know. I requested that he assist me in opening a storage unit promptly and moving items discreetly. Without asking any extra questions, Waverly responded, "Send me the location, I'll bring the truck." Darcy appeared at my study door around 7 to bid farewell. She was stunning, as always. She said, "Don't keep me waiting. These tasks often run late." I replied, "I won't." She departed. Waverly arrived 20 minutes later. We worked expeditiously. Objects do not typically evoke sentimentality in me. However, I possess a clear understanding of what holds significance to me, and I gathered those items, my books. Not all of them, only the ones that accompanied me since medical school, the ones that traveled with me from one apartment to another during residency. The photo of my parents on the study bookshelf. The Tag Heuer watch my father presented during my surgical residency acceptance, a modest piece yet invaluable to me. My possessions, clothes, medical gear, laptop, and an external drive laden with 17 years of financial documents and professional files. All items I brought into the marriage, all I took out. Nothing belonged to us, nothing up for debate, nothing that could be used against me as taking something not mine. Waverly efficiently loaded the truck, a man well-versed in moving belongings, knowing when it's time to go. We finished in 2 hours. I contacted the storage unit on James Robertson Parkway, East Nashville, and they had a space waiting. Once the truck was empty and Waverly departed, I walked through the house one last time. It still resembled our home. Her furniture, her artwork, the throw pillows she carefully selected over 3 weekends, the kitchen where countless ordinary meals were shared, the living room where Sunday evenings were spent watching television without any pressing obligations, and the back porch where coffee was sipped during summer mornings before heading to the hospital, viewing the dawn break over the yard. I loved this life. I want to articulate, because it's easy to assume that when someone leaves, they never truly experienced it. I was part of it. I chose it. I struggled for it in a silent daily manner by showing up, being present, and striving to be the kind of partner who enhances life. However, one cannot fight for something alone. And one cannot fight for something when the outcome had already been decided before entering the home. I composed the letter on a solitary sheet of paper at the kitchen counter, using longhand, where it all began. I made sure to write it without anger, and I want to emphasize that point. The words were written with the same level of thoughtfulness I apply to important matters. Darcy, after giving your statement from last night careful consideration, I've come to understand a few things. You conveyed that your family views me inferior compared to your former spouse, and suggested avoiding bringing me to your brother's gathering for comfort reasons. Yet you didn't express disapproval of their viewpoint or defend my standing. Instead, you opted to manage the awkwardness, indicating acceptance of their judgment. Now I recognize that I've been attempting for 4 years to secure a place at a table that was never designed for me under my preferred conditions. I'm no longer prepared to spend the next 40 years in this same struggle. I wish you all the success on your search. Sincerely. The letter is beside the coffee maker, and my house key sits on top of it. Drove to the temporarily rented apartment in Germantown, a neighborhood near downtown Nashville, close enough for a stroll to the hospital during good weather. The empty flat's edge was where I sat, not feeling like a man who had wrecked his life, but one who, for the first time in a long time, truthfully acknowledged his actual existence. Received a call from Lynette at 11:14 that night. Knew the exact hour because I was still awake reading, and her name popped up on my phone. Almost didn't answer, then thought, no, I'll answer. Whatever this is, it's better to confront it directly than leave it hanging. Said, hello, Lynette, followed by a pause before Ellison Darcy called instead. She said she was home and I wasn't there. Her things were gone, followed by a brief silence. What happened? I asked. I suspect you already know what occurred, she replied with another longer pause this time. Background voices suggested the party was ending, possibly with Lynette taking this call outside. She informed me that Darcy shared something with me. I responded with okay. She clarified that what she heard wasn't representative of her feelings towards me, as both she and Randall have always held me in high regard, Ellison. They consider me a good man. I acknowledged her sentiment sincerely. Finally, she inquired about something important. Had anyone in her family ever implied to Darcy or others that I wasn't suitable, that I was below Preston? The pause this time was extended, and she neither confirmed nor denied it. Her statement was, families have complex emotions when, and I allowed her to complete her thought as I wished to understand her conclusion. She said, when a person they care about takes an action that catches them off guard. I acknowledged with a simple I see. She then advised, Ellison, don't make any irreversible decisions. Let Darcy explain. She cares for you. I responded, Lynette, I'm not angry at Darcy. I'm not angry at anyone. I just needed to be truthful about what I could tolerate. I thanked her for the call and inquired about the rest of the gathering. The conversation ended there. My phone buzzed 12 times that evening with messages from Darcy. I read each one, the first three being different versions of "Where are you? Call me." The fourth was "I don't call me." The fifth was "I don't understand what happened." The sixth through ninth continued with apologies, which were essentially explanations and justifications. My family follows tradition, and Preston is familiar with them. It's not reasonable to compare our backgrounds. What truly matters is my affection for you. The 10th statement was "This reaction seems excessive." The 11th was "Please return home." The 12th was "I need you to contact me." I didn't respond. I switched off the light and slept more peacefully than I had in months. During the following week, I discovered a crucial fact about myself. I am an individual who processes through action. I visited the hospital every day, performed my duties, attended to my patients, and carried out surgeries. Somewhere in the middle of that week, I recognized that the burden I'd been feeling for the past year or two, a constant low-level sense of falling short, not quite belonging, not quite achieving, had vanished. I hadn't realized how heavy a load I was carrying until it disappeared. Darcy contacted me daily. Initially through texts, then calls, and finally a lengthy email that she clearly put considerable effort into composing. She discussed counseling. She discussed her desire to grasp what transpired incorrectly. She expressed regret for her actions towards me and apologized. I've read every bit of it. I feel compelled to mention this. I didn't ignore her or block her. I read every message she sent. However, during my reading, a pattern emerged that spoke volumes. In none of it did she acknowledge my family was in the wrong. She apologized for how she communicated the issue. She admitted that she could have handled it differently. She expressed remorse for causing me pain, yet she never stated, "They had no right to judge you like that. They were wrong. I should have corrected them promptly, but I didn't, and I feel ashamed about that." That omission served as a response. 12 days after I left, Darcy's father contacted me. Randall is a businessman, and the call possessed the tone of a negotiation. He expressed respect for me. He informed me that Darcy was heartbroken. He admitted that families often face challenging periods, and he hoped I wouldn't base a permanent decision on a single tough discussion. I inquired directly, to which he agreed. I asked if he thought I was inferior to Preston Wexford, and he responded by acknowledging I was distinct. He believed our family had a particular kind of background with specific types of individuals, and Preston fitted comfortably within that mold. I clarified that wasn't the same as a no. There was a brief pause before he conceded, "No, I guess it isn't." I appreciated his honesty, respecting him for it, and informing him I considered that chapter concluded. Surprisingly, Garrett extended his hand, something we hadn't been close enough for in the past. However, 3 weeks following the event, he sent an unexpected text message. He admitted the gathering wasn't my initiative. It was planned by my mom and Darcy. "I didn't realize you weren't included until the event itself, and I wanted to inform you because the situation wasn't proper." I responded, "I genuinely appreciate that, Garrett." He responded, "She values you as much as I can say." She's been struggling for a while to be both my mother and someone who meets her family's expectations simultaneously, but she hasn't quite managed to prioritize them correctly. I pondered his words for some time, realizing she was torn between loving me and seeking familial approval. In the instant when she had to decide which should take precedence, she chose the one that imposed no cost on her. I express this not with resentment, but as a simple observation, because it's the only truthful perspective I can find. The divorce wasn't straightforward, for divorces rarely are, but it was also devoid of drama. We had a mediator. We each had separate lawyers. Divided equitably and kindly, our possessions were sold swiftly in 3 weeks. The house was listed, and it found a buyer promptly. Real estate in Nashville seldom lingers. We apportioned the earnings based on each one's contributions. Darcy wept at the concluding mediation session, genuine tears, similar to those she shed when I proposed by that rocky overlook during October's fiery foliage. I remained dry-eyed, not because of a lack of emotion, but because I had previously grieved during our early days in the Germantown apartment, silently and alone, as I often do with difficult moments. Upon completion, I exited the mediator's office on Church Street in downtown Nashville into one of those rare winter days that Nashville occasionally offers, cold enough to see your breath, yet with a sky so blue it seems painful. I paused on the sidewalk for a moment and felt the same sensation I experienced the night I departed. Not quite relief, more like a tranquility, the essence of a person who has ceased feigning. My hospital associate, the one who invited me to the gala where I met Darcy, inquired about my well-being a few months later, not in a casual sense, but genuinely concerned. I told her the truth. I admitted that I was better than I had anticipated, truly so. She inquired, "What do you long for?" After pondering, I responded, "The concept of life," I said, "not life itself." She gave a nod indicating comprehension. She has been married for 20 years to a man who clearly cherishes her, and I believe she grasped the difference more profoundly than I intended. There exists a version of my marriage in my mind, the one I was striving for, the family gatherings and lazy Sunday mornings that were amassing into something tangible. I cherished that version. I mourned that version. The genuine experience, characterized by the polite dinners and the uninvited gatherings, the phantom presence at the table, the silently accepted evaluation, is what I don't long for, not for a single moment or instant. To anyone who resonates with this tale, I have something to say. It could be the parallels that strike a chord. It might be the family that failed to embrace you fully. It may be the lover who cherishes you in secret but cannot stand up for you publicly. It could be the rationale offered that seemed like a verdict. Remember this, your value is not defined by your comparison to someone else's past. It isn't dictated by the norms of a family that knew them before. It doesn't fluctuate based on the age or the antiquity of wealth, nor does it change with how long a name has been in a particular region. I am an orthopedic surgeon. I mend bones that enable people to walk, run, and carry their children. This is my work, my creation. Yet I apologized excessively for too long, subtly, as one does when accepting another's perspective, for not aligning with certain expectations in my construction. You don't have to acquire acceptance in a space by imitating someone else. You don't need to compete with a phantom. You don't have to reside in a dwelling where the conditions of your presence have been determined without your voice. The instant Darcy informed me her family deemed me inferior, her decision was not about one side. It was about the self she would present, about the loyalty she would prioritize, about what she was prepared to uphold. She made her choice. I still admire it, as you admire a choice that caused you pain when you comprehend it was sincerely made. And I made mine. Currently reside in Germantown, occupying a 2-bedroom apartment overlooking the Cumberland River in the west. The sunset over this water during evenings presents an authentic beauty. I dine wherever I wish, work according to my patient's needs, and maintain my friends, colleagues, routines, and life. Last autumn, for the first time in 4 years, I took a week off and self-explored the Smoky Mountains. I stayed in a cabin outside Gatlinburg for 3 nights. I hiked a lamb cave trail, sat on a rock above the clouds, consumed a granola bar, and pondered aimlessly for an hour. This was one of the best weeks I can recall in recent memory. I am not a man who has renounced love. Instead, I have become distinct about its essence, its cost and rewards, and its public and private demands. I am not in a rush. I am content with my pace and time. 8 months following our divorce conclusion, Darcy phoned me on a Tuesday evening. Remarkably, I recalled this as I was preparing charts for the next day. She mentioned she had been contemplating calling for quite some time. She admitted she felt sorry for me, not in a court-mandated manner nor in a late-night text way, but sincerely and straightforwardly. She apologized for her words and their implications. "You deserved better from me." I responded, "Thank you, Darcy." She went on to say, "I've been seeking therapy. I've been attempting to comprehend how I could have loved you and still let things unfold as they did." I replied, "I believe you loved me as much as you were able at that moment in time. I don't think you're a bad person." She responded, "That's more compassionate than I likely deserve." I countered, "Perhaps, but it's truthful." We spoke for a while on various trivial topics, discussing the sale of her house, work updates, and navigating our shared past without it overwhelming us. Before she ended the call, she expressed, "I hope you find what you seek." I nearly chuckled, not harshly, but because I'd essentially said the same thing to her in my kitchen note. I responded, "I believe I already have. I'm discovering it a bit more each day." This is genuinely and completely accurate. Now, let's be honest for a moment. What intrigues me about narratives like Ellison's isn't the social gathering or family in-law conflicts. It's how long decent individuals endure disrespect without voicing their feelings because they don't want to cause trouble. And honestly, I understand this. No one wishes to be perceived as difficult. However, there is a distinction between being tolerant and gradually accepting subordinate treatment. As soon as you find yourself prioritizing someone else's comfort over your own pain, take note. You don't require a grand departure to maintain self-worth. It can be a silent decision to step back. If you've ever experienced such an insightful moment, share it below in the comments. And if you're new, feel free to subscribe as we have many more of these insights on tap. See you next time.